Well, I am really looking forward to talking to you all today. So influence is actually one of my favorite topics. And so we're going to dig into the secrets of influence today. And spoiler alert, it really has nothing to do with hashtags. So we're going to kind of skip over and suspend this social digital media hashtag conversation and really drill down to the core of influence. So when we think about influence, though, we do nowadays think about social media. So we think about the very clever person and people who has figured out how to get paid for doing the thing that the rest of the world does for exactly $0. And that is to have conversations on social media and share content on social media. But the truth is, influence happens everywhere. Influence has been around long before social media existed. Influence has happened all week in this very group. It happens year-round in MSBO. It happens in your schools, in your communities. It happens in your families. It happens in your religious institutions. It is literally everywhere. So what we'll do first is really kind of do some definition around influence. When I started digging into this topic, I kind of dug into it on accident. I was talking about the same thing Damien was just talking about, all the different ways you lead. And I was teeing up one of those traditional managers do this and leaders do this presentations. I think you've probably all heard some version of this. And something always felt like it was missing. It always felt like there was a category that I fit in that was never showing up in this presentation, because I never focused on managing per se, or even leading per se, because a lot of times that comes with connotations of title and power and authority, and we'll dig into that. As I dug into this, what I realized is the third category that I felt I fit in and that I wished more people were talking about is influence. And so instead of going to the presentation and giving the talk that I was going to give, which is what you see there on the first two columns, the managers versus leaders talk, I started talking about influence. And I'm going to tell you why I chose that and why it's so powerful in just a moment. But first, let's do some definitions. So by definition, influence is the ability to inspire and guide the actions of others, or the ability to create interest and buy-in. Now, you can't talk about this without talking about another word, power. Power is the possession of control and authority. And a lot of times when we think about management and leadership and even navigating in our friend groups, our family groups, our community, what we're talking about to a certain degree is power and that's control and authority. Another definition of power is your ability to influence. And that gave me my first aha moment as I was digging into this topic of influence. Because what this tells me when I look at these two words and how we define them is that control and authority, meaning power, don't always translate into interest and buy-in. But influence is always power. So when you think about that, think about a boss you had, a leader you worked for. They may have gotten you to move and to do certain things simply based on their control and authority. I decide what you get paid, when you get promoted, and whether or not you're allowed to come here again on Monday. That's control and authority. It doesn't mean they won your heart and mind. And that's the difference. And that's why the third part of the managers versus leaders conversation emerged for me, is that there is a third opportunity for everyone, and that's to focus on influence. And once you learn the secrets of influence, there's a lot of power in that. So the next reason influence is hugely important part of this conversation is anyone can be an influencer. You actually don't need control, authority, money, or any other thing we think brings power to have influence. So every one of us can stand up from this today, walk out, and start influencing the people, the communities, the organizations around us. So let's figure out how we can do this, because by the end of this presentation, I'm going to leave you with 7 days worth of simple tasks you can take that will automatically increase your influence. So here's some of the not so secret secrets of influence. And I say they're not so secret because a lot of this is innate in many people and very learnable in almost all people. So this is not a code we have to work too hard to crack. So influential people really understand, again, it's not about hashtags, it's not about content. Influential people know what the core is all about. And the core of influence is all about connection. It is about your ability to deeply and authentically connect with people. If you can't connect with someone, you are never going to get their interest, their buy-in. You're never going to win their hearts and minds. So everything we talk about today is going to go back to connection. And we're going to dig into 5 areas where influential people are intentional and mindful and highly skilled at connecting. And all of that, it allows them to constantly increase their influence amongst the people that they live, work, and socialize with. So the first area is influencers are very good at building trust. So when we think about trust around influence, I want to give you 4 key areas to focus on. The first one is authenticity. Influential people are genuine and they are true to their values. And I know you all have heard that word values this week, and we're going to talk about it a little more in depth later. Influential people at their core, they know who they are and they show up consistently, where they are wearing fewer and fewer masks. And all human beings wear masks to a certain degree, but the most influential people have started whittling away at those masks. So they are authentic, and you get the same version of them in almost all instances in all cases. They're vulnerable. There's our friend Achilles. So vulnerability is your ability to show up, be seen, and do that even though you know there's a risk for doing so. And the amazing part about vulnerability is once I'm vulnerable with you, you're more likely to be vulnerable with me. And when we're vulnerable with each other, we connect. So influential people are willing to be vulnerable first. They are willing to talk about their shortcomings. They are willing to admit when they make mistakes. They are willing to share lessons learned even when those lessons learned don't make them look amazing. They're vulnerable. And vulnerability very much has a place in business, no matter where you work and what you do. Very much has a place. And we're going to talk about a different type of vulnerability in just a little bit. The next area where influencers are great at building trust is integrity. So they're honest, they're fair, they're reliable, they're accountable. Not all the time, they're human, they make mistakes, but they're always trying to show up and act within their integrity. And finally, they focus on maintaining confidentiality. So for me to have confidence in you means I've put my trust in you. So of course, if you're breaking my confidence, you're breaking my trust, and we're not connecting. Now I want you to think of people in your life. We've all met people that we think are inauthentic. We've all navigated people who never are vulnerable, people out of their integrity, and people that we know have loose lips and will never maintain our confidence. Now think about how much you've trusted those people. Odds are not very much. It is very difficult to build trust and connect and therefore increase your influence if you don't build off of these 4 areas of trust. And this is where influencers kind of build the foundation of influence right here in trust. The second area where influencers excel is they are always working to exercise empathy. And I actually think your ability to be empathetic is actually vulnerable because you have to step outside of yourself. So let's talk about what empathy really is. Just what I said, stepping outside of yourself. It's your ability to see beyond yourself and your own experiences, to consider someone else's perspective, to simply imagine what life would be like in that person's shoes. Now, here's the caveat about empathy. You cannot be simultaneously empathetic and judgmental. Now, every human is judgmental, but in the moment, if I'm trying to empathize with you, I cannot show up and simultaneously be empathetic to you while I'm judging you. Those 2 things cannot live in the same moment. So one of the ways you can automatically start being empathetic is by trying to drop your judgment. You can acknowledge that it has shown up and then try to move past it. There's a lot of other ways you can be empathetic. So some things to consider if you want to try to increase your ability to empathize with others. First, when you're talking to someone and you want to show up with empathy, think about their perspective. What perspective might they have? Consider what's going on in his or her life or his or her work. So the person who rolls their eyes during a conference, instead of getting mad, think, hey, I know they're going through something at home, or hey, I know it's been a long day for them. Maybe it's not personal. How do you want to show up in the conversation you're having or the relationship that you're building? Influential people are always thinking about how they show up. And how can you acknowledge and validate another person's experience? And I'm going to actually give you some very specific ways you can acknowledge and validate people. When you consider these things as you're navigating relationships, you're coming from a place of empathy. You can also ask people empathetic questions. And this increases your empathy. How is blank affecting you? How is this affecting you? How are you doing? How does that make you feel? What do you think about that? How can I encourage and support you? Or simply tell me more. What you'll notice about empathetic questions is they're open-ended. That means you can't answer them with yes or no. It is highly empathetic to ask an open-ended question than to close our own mouths and allow the other person to talk. Give them the floor and let them answer. So you know that you are showing up empathetically if you're dropping that judgment, considering their experience, and asking them an open-ended question that gives them the floor to express their thoughts and their feelings. Let's talk a little bit about organizational empathy. This is huge. So long before 2020 happened, we were starting to see more and more conversations about empathy being built in organizationally. And I will tell you, if there is one thing that the pandemic did right out of the gate in 2020, is it humanized us a little bit more with our colleagues, because we were having pets and children and family members in and out of the room. And so we started to see each other as humans first and employees second. And that increases our empathy. So some ways that you can make sure that you are organizationally empathetic: diversity, inclusion, equity in action, not just in our values, not just on the walls, not just on a piece of paper, but actually in action. Be intentional about employee engagement. Don't allow a culture to emerge organically. That's actually not empathetic, and it can be very disastrous. Be very intentional about the culture you're building and how you engage each other as colleagues and how you're engaging your team. Allow your colleagues to bring their human to work. We expect humans, particularly in this country, you can cry the whole way to work, but check it in the parking lot. Don't bring that stuff in here. Don't show up and be human in front of us. We don't want to see it. We don't want to understand it. We don't want to think about it. 2020 has changed that. We're humans first, employees second. And so allow your colleagues to bring their human to work. It doesn't mean we're going to be on fainting couches crying all day. It just means that we have an ability to look empathetically at one another and acknowledge that we're humans first. Finally, something you can do, and you could do this even in just a lunch and learn or just a quick staff meeting, take your organizational values and make sure you've translated those at the faculty level, at the administrative level, at the staff level. Organizations are really great about coming up with mission, vision, and values. Where we have a long way to go is making sure that our staff, our faculty, our administration, our team is bought into those values. So 3 things you can ask over a quick lunch and learn around this. Take each one of your values and ask your team, what does this mean to us at the staff level? How are we currently living this value? And where could we be better? That's it. Just 3 questions and get that conversation started, and then really take those values and translate them at the staff level, because they don't automatically translate. Empathetic questions you can ask, more open-ended questions. You can ask this of anyone, whether it's colleagues, students, parents, members in the community, sponsors. How can we be better? How can we meet your expectations? Because we really want to try to do that. Tell me what makes this important to you. I want to understand. What is and isn't working well? We'd like to do more of what is. What do you want to experience as a blank, as a student, as a parent, as a sponsor? I want to work toward that. What can I do to improve our relationship? I'll try. These are very empathetic questions that all organizations can start asking of the people that they engage within their community. The third area where influencers are always working to connect is they are mastering the art of listening. So it is very ironic that the most important part of communication is the part that we practice and focus on the least, and that's listening. Most of us are really incredible at talking, sharing our opinions, telling our stories, but we're not so good at listening. Influencers are very good at listening. I'm going to share with you 5 levels of listening, and then we'll figure out where the average human hangs out, and then we'll figure out where the most influential people hang out. The first level of listening is subjective listening. So this is all about my needs and my agenda. This means I'm listening to you. I hear the words that are coming out of your mouth, but I'm only listening to you so I can formulate my next sentence, my next story, my next joke, my argument in defense of my position. Level 2 is objective listening. It's no longer about me and my agenda, and I'm still listening to you, but I'm not connecting with you. I'm not asking open-ended, empowering, empathetic questions. So this kind of sounds like, oh, sounds like a tough meeting, but you got through it. Good job. End of conversation. Where do we go from there? The third is intuitive listening. This is where you're really taking everything in. You're listening for the real meaning of what the person's saying. So I'm hearing the words that you're saying. I'm listening for tone of voice, vocal inflection, watching your facial expressions and your body language. I'm really listening for not just what you're saying, but all the things underneath what you're saying that you're actually not saying. And I'm getting curious. Now, I said there were 5 levels. So under level 1 is intrusive listening. We're all great at this, interrupting. We are great at intrusive listening. And if it couldn't get any worse, there's -1. That's not listening. That's, yeah, exactly, Damien. That's me on my phone going, wow, oh, wow. Scroll, like. So the average human, of course, is highly skilled at -1 up to 2. This is where we like to hang out. The most influential people hone level 3. So intuitive listening, you might have heard this called active listening. One of the most fun ways I worked on my active intuitive listening was to take an improv class. Because if you've ever taken improv, you know, you have to literally focus in on what the person who is speaking is saying, because they might start on a beach in Maui and end in Mars. And if you spent your whole time not listening to them, making up a funny beach joke, and they take you to Mars, you're going to end the scene because you're not going to know where to go from there. So a lot of improv troupes will come in, they'll work with your group. It's a lot of fun, but it's a great way to really become a more intuitive, active listener. Another skill that you can develop to become an active, intuitive listener, but also deeply, deeply empathetic, is called acknowledging and validating. And I spoke of this earlier. Acknowledging simply shows that you're listening to what the person is saying. Validating is you honoring everyone's right to feel emotionally how they feel. You can acknowledge and validate someone without co-signing what they're saying or agreeing with them. And I will tell you, this is one of my favorite tools, and it's a skill I'm so thankful I learned, because this does not happen very often. Most of the time, people are interrupting us or not listening to us, or they're telling us what we should do, why we shouldn't feel the way we feel, and so we don't feel seen, heard, and understood. But it is a basic need of humans to feel seen, heard, and understood. So when you learn this skill, it is like giving water to a thirsty person. So let me give you the components of acknowledging, validating. To acknowledge someone, you want to let them know that you've heard what they've said. So you might think of this as parroting or mirroring, and it might sound like, let me see if I'm understanding. Or in other words, it sounds like, based on what you shared. And then remember, validating is letting them know that they are allowed to have whatever feeling they're having about the situation that they've shared with you. Doesn't mean you agree with it, but they do have a right to have it. So it's understandable that you would feel that way because, or I know blank is important to you, so it makes sense that you feel blank. I can see where it would make you feel blank. So for example, it sounds like you worked really hard on that presentation for the board. And I hear what you're saying, that the board ended up running behind and your presentation was canceled. It makes sense that you would feel this way. You worked really hard on that, and it's completely understandable that you would feel frustrated. It's as simple as that, and you really can't mess this up. So after that, we'll go into our 4th one, navigating difficult conversations. I don't know about you, but I don't naturally love difficult conversations. But influential people know you have to have difficult conversations to connect. I'm a big believer that the human spirit can only take 1 battle per day, not even 1 per day if you can avoid it. And so I give you 3 things to think about before you have a difficult conversation, before you mount your horse, ride to the top of the mountain, and fight to the death. First, is this my battle? In my younger years, I would fight my friends' battles for them all the time because I had the loudest mouth. So they would send me into battle to have the difficult conversation. But sometimes it's not my battle. It's not my time to step up and be the one that has that conversation. Then if it is your battle, is today the day? Can I take this energetically today? Is today my day to have this conversation? And if it is my day, how can I mitigate the damage? See, influential people are all about connection. They don't want to break down relationships. They want to build them up. So if we choose to have an influential conversation, we want to go in prepared to mitigate damage. So one of the things you do in order to accomplish that is to investigate before you react. Pump those brakes for a second. Try to understand the situation. Check in with yourself emotionally. How's this making me feel? Separate the person from the issue. If anyone else said that to me other than this person, would it bother me? Because sometimes we just have a bone to pick with that person. Identify your goals for the conversation. What do I want to get out of this? Where do I want to land? And then always be considering what your role is in reaching those goals and how you're going to support that conversation. And then you've got to start the conversation. So here's 3 things you can say to start a difficult conversation. I use this almost always, except for those rare times that I just like blow my top. So the first one is to let the person know we're about to go to battle. I've shown up, my armor is on, and I'm ready to go to battle. So we need to have a difficult conversation. You don't want to walk into someone's office and chit chat them up and how was the weekend, and then just go, and by the way, you were horrible yesterday. Give them a heads up. Let them know. I think we need to have a difficult conversation. But I know it's going to end well. This plants the seed that you are not there to do collateral damage. You believe that you are both functioning adults, or that you're the adult and they're the child, and you know this is going to end well. This is really important if you're about to have a corrective conversation with someone who reports to you and you're not about to fire them. Because the minute you start telling them you're going to have a difficult conversation, they're planning about how they're going to get unemployment and how they're going to put food on the table, and they're not listening. So go ahead and let them know. It's going to end well. We're going to navigate this and get through it, but it's going to be hard. How do you feel about that? This draws back to empathy, because it might be your battle and it might be your day, and it might be their battle, but it might not be their day. So give them a chance to tell you that, yeah, we do need to talk about this, but I can't do it today. Can we talk about it tomorrow? And then get that time on the calendar to have the conversation. Lots of empathy here, lots of signaling that you're here to connect and to continue to build and not burn the relationship down. This is something influencers are really great at. Once you get into it, just confront it head on. Here's the situation as I see it. Don't stop at here's the situation, because then you're saying this is universal truth. Here's the situation, you were horrible yesterday. We don't do that, because then that puts them on the defensive. Here's the situation as I see it. The story I'm telling myself is blank. This is what I really want for us, or this is what I really want to see happen. What do you want? How can we get there? And this is where you get into your goals and you start showing up and talking about what you're going to do to move forward. Finally, the 5th area where influencers are always focusing is they're always trying to show up in service. So when we think about some of the most influential people in history, they didn't always have control or authority or money. They were in service of others. And so this is a really important piece to influence, is figuring out ways that we can show up in service. So one way to know if you or your organization, your school is in service, ask yourself these questions. Am I acting with empathy? Are we empathetic as a school, as an organization, as a staff? Do we listen more than we talk? Are we showing up authentically and true to our values? Do we elevate others and share influence? One way to increase your own influence is by introducing another person who's got a skill or an ability or a talent and saying that I'm not the right person for that, but Jill over here is amazing. That increases Jill's influence and my influence all at the same time. Are we adding value? Are we willing to take action and not just use our words, but actually put action behind it? These are all good signs that you're in service. So when we think about collaborations, I think there's really 5 types of collaborators who show up. And we'll start at the bottom, because collaborating is one way we serve one another. At the bottom, there's the person who walks into the collaboration kickoff meeting with the attitude of, I don't even know why I'm here. I never win. I never get my way. I'm not going to get to talk about anything important to me. I'm just here because I have to be. The second person, I'm going to win at all costs. I'm going to come in here and overtalk you all. I'm going to run my agenda. I'm going to get everything that I need done. And then I'm going to go back to my day and leave like a wake of destruction behind me in this room. The third person shows up. Can't wait to collaborate. Hope we all win by doing it my way. I've got all the answers. You shall follow me. The fourth person shows up. Hope we all win. Let's get started. And then that like 5th person is kind of Phoebe from Friends. Oh, winning and losing, they're all illusions. Like, yeah, whatever, man, whatever you want. Now, we all have the ability to show up all these ways, even the Phoebe way. But the most influential people show up at level 4. I hope we all win. I'm here, I'm willing, I'm able, let's do this. I don't care if it's my idea that we move forward with or yours. Let's just get this done and make this a great collaboration. Influencers show up with that mindset, and that's serving through collaboration. And the way that really looks is they're showing up with their head, their heart, and their hands. So when you're collaborating with your head and your heart and your hands, people want to work with you. You're always invited to the table. Showing up with your head, think strategically, bring logic into it, add value, be a connector of ideas and people, be a consensus builder. Think with your heart and how you're going to collaborate there. Authentic, trust building, making sure that you're showing up with empathy and you're acting with integrity. And then finally, your hands. Roll up your sleeves. Nobody wants to collaborate with the person that shows up for the kickoff and then disappears and shows up to cut the cake and celebrate at the end and pat themselves on the back. So be willing to roll up your sleeves and get in there and help and do some of the work. Always do what you're going to say, do what you say that you're going to do, and hold yourself accountable for what you say, what you do, and what you don't say, and what you don't do. So if you're collaborating with your head and your heart and your hands, you're probably showing up in service, and you're probably going to be increasing your influence. Now, those are the 5 areas. And I love these 5 areas because this is either in you or it is so close to being in you that all you have to do is just make a few tweaks and you've got it. So I'm going to leave you with 7 days of influence challenge. It's not hard. It's adding one thing every day. And I guarantee you, if you take this 7-day challenge, at the end of the 7 days, you will be a more influential person in whatever area of your life you've focused on. Hopefully all areas. So day 1, core values exercise. I want you to take a core values exercise and figure out who you are so you can show up authentically. Now, I know earlier this week, you all talked about core values, and I saw this, and I have to tell you, when Damien sent this over to me, I said, this is it. This is influence. This is the biggest part of what is going to make you all influential as individuals and as schools and as members of your community. Honesty, accountability, growth, diversity, inclusiveness, sincerity, service. This is the starting place. This is the foundation. I want to give you a tool that will help you dig even more into your own values. This is completely free, meaning I'm not even going to ask you for your email address and then harass you with marketing to get this. This is a core values workbook. It'll take you about 20 to 30 minutes. And what it will do is it will help you narrow down to your top 5 values and then help you gauge how well you're living those values, both at work and in your personal life. You can get them on my website, causecollaboration.com/core values. So that's day 1. Take that, get really a good understanding of your values, and then start seeing how they show up in your day-to-day. Day 2, walk around acknowledging and validating everyone. I see you, I hear you, you have a right to feel the way you feel. You will not break humans if you do this. You will just connect with them. Day 3, spend the whole day showing up on time and doing what you say you're going to do. Day 4, hold yourself accountable. If you didn't show up on time and you didn't do what you say you're going to do, hold yourself accountable for it. Make amends. That increases trust and connection and influence. Day 5, avoid gossip all day long. If someone is going to gossip with you, they will most definitely gossip about you. It is almost impossible to build trust and connect if you are known as a gossip. So just try to avoid it altogether. Day 6, practice that intuitive, active listening, the words that they're saying, their tone of voice, their facial expressions, their body language. Bring it all in. Bonus points if you ask empathetic, open-ended questions to keep the person talking. And on your 7th day, think about the areas where you collaborate in life. And then question whether you're showing up with your head, your heart, and your hands. And if you're falling short in one of those areas, make a commitment to show up more in that way. If you do this, I promise you, you will increase your influence. And it doesn't matter if you're focusing on community, your schools, within your own team, within this organization, it will absolutely make you seen as a more influential person, and you will be able to really win the hearts and minds of the people that are around you. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.